Michael Schumacher was so superior that sports fans were actually getting bored with Formula One. Such a dominance is rarely seen at the highest levels of sport these days, but the German was an exception to the rule in many ways. Lewis Hamilton burst onto the F1 scene, and a decade later, he's on track to be one of the greatest drivers in history. Sustained excellence for a couple of seasons is hard enough. MotoGP legend Valentino Rossi has been doing it for 20 years. This is the Immortals. He dominated Formula One like no other. Michael Schumacher didn't just rewrite the record books, he demolished them. It's a fair indication of greatness when the governing body of the sport has to change the rules to curb your dominance. Michael Schumacher took Formula One into uncharted territory. The German was virtually unstoppable in his Ferrari, winning 5 consecutive Drivers' Championships from 2000 to 2004. In 2002, he produced a year of unrivaled supremacy, winning the title with 6 races left in the F1 season. Ferrari won 15 of the 17 races between Schumacher and his teammate Rubens Barrichello. His 11 race victories was a new record. He also finished on the podium in every event and won the title by a record-breaking 67 points. After back-to-back World Championship wins with Benetton in 1994 and 95, it was Schumacher's 5th world title, equaling the mark of legend Juan Manuel Fangio. Even the man himself was surprised at the ease in which he'd ruled the sport.
Listen, my career is about 12 years of Formula One. I've had 1 year where it might, for you, have been a bit easy for me, but in the end, it is a 10th of my career. So I'm quite happy to have a little time like that, and it will become automatically more harder because other teams haven't done a great job last year, and I'm pretty sure they will do a much better job this year, and therefore competition will become harder, and then Rubens obviously in the same team will make my job tough as well.
The following season, he claimed the record with his 6th title after only requiring 1 point in the final race of the season in Japan. Then, incredibly, in 2004, Schumacher took his career where no one thought possible. The Red Baron won an extraordinary 12 of the first 13 races of the season, with his only blemish coming after an accident during the safety car period at the Monaco Grand Prix. He went on to set a new record of 13 victories from 18 events, collecting a record 148 points. There was no stopping Schumacher, but a rule change ultimately would. New tire rules meant teams could only use 1 set of tires for qualifying and the race, rather than the unlimited sets of new rubber, a key component of Ferrari's success. This played into the hands of Ferrari's rivals, whose tire manufacturer was better prepared for the change. I don't think I can count myself in this battle anymore. It was like trying to fight with a blunted weapon. Schumacher only won 1 race in the 2005 season, and while he battled for the title the following year, the damage had been done. As he stood on the podium after having won the Italian Grand Prix in 2006, Ferrari released a statement announcing his retirement at the end of the season. Schumacher did win 1 more time in China to finish 2nd in the title race, before driving off into the sunset with an extraordinary 91 wins and 7 world championships. Still to come on the Immortals, the tragic twist in the Schumacher story. It's regarded by many as his greatest performance. After winning 2 world championships with Benetton, Michael Schumacher arrived at Ferrari in 1996 with the Herculean task to drag the once great team out of a championship drought. It had been more than a decade since the prancing horse had been competitive, and the reigning world champion was seen as the savior. At the Spanish Grand Prix, he produced a drive in extremely wet conditions that left legends of the sport in awe. Schumacher climbed from 6th early in the race to lapping the entire field except 2nd and 3rd. The winning margin was an incredible 45 seconds. The 96 car was a disaster and was nearly undrivable. Only someone of Michael Schumacher's ability, and maybe Senna, could have driven it. But Schumacher's extreme take-no-prisoners attitude also got him into trouble, with the German featuring twice in collisions in the final race of the season to decide championships. His first world title in 1994 was claimed in Australia. He had come into the race with a 1-point lead over Britain's Damon Hill. Schumacher hit a guardrail on the 36th lap, and when Hill attempted to pass him, both cars collided and were forced to retire from the race. In 1997, he again led by 1 point, this time from Canada's Jacques Villeneuve, coming into the final race at the European Grand Prix. After running into mechanical difficulties, Schumacher tried to crash into Villeneuve as he went to pass him on the 48th lap. He was charged with unsportsmanlike conduct and disqualified from the Drivers' Championship. There was certainly no love lost between the pair, who would duel over the next decade.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to him, and I never felt we are friends, to be honest, but we came on normal, I would say. You know, in racing, you have so many problems that you don't want to have personal problems with anyone, really, if it is not necessary. So I quite like it to race hard, and then in the evening, if you can, you have a beer together and have a chat together. If that is possible, fine. If not, I don't worry as well.
Schumacher was followed into F1 by his younger brother Ralph, with both learning the ropes on a karting track. Their father Rolf managed in the small town of Kerpen, just outside Cologne. It was a labor of love for Rolf, who maintained the karts as well as the track and all the facilities, with his wife Elizabeth making coffee and sandwiches. Both boys quickly rose through the ranks, with Michael starting his F1 career at 22, the same age Ralph did in 1997 with the Jordan team.
My wife and I are very nervous during races. We are always pleased when the race is over. That is logical. It would be lying to say something else. But we are, of course, pleased with what our sons are doing.
In 2001, at the Canadian Grand Prix, they became the first brothers in F1 history to finish first and second in a race. They did it another 4 times before Michael walked away at the end of the 2006 season. When he returned 4 years later, a lot had changed. His younger brother was no longer racing, and he wasn't wearing the famous Ferrari red. Instead, it was the Mercedes grey for the returning legend. He had been lured there by his former Ferrari technical director Ross Brawn, who was now a co-owner of the Mercedes team.
I thought, why not? I mean, I'm still fit enough. I'm still mentally ready for it. And I like the challenge.
Schumacher was 41 when he competed in the 2010 season opener in Bahrain, where he finished 6th. It was tough going for the former great, And for the first time since his debut season of 1991, he finished without a win, pole position, podium, or fastest lap. A third place at the 2012 European Grand Prix in Spain was Schumacher's best result in his final season. Despite the failed comeback bid, the legend of Schumacher remained unscathed. He was a Formula One immortal, the greatest there had ever been. Ayrton Senna was the legend of Formula One when Michael Schumacher burst onto the scene. He died in a tragic accident during the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix, which Schumacher won. Almost 2 decades later, it was Schumacher who was creating worldwide headlines after a tragic accident. Not on the racetrack, but on the ski slopes of the French Alps. An accomplished skier, Schumacher often took his family to the mountains to escape the grind of the F1 season. But on December 29, 2013, Schumacher was skiing with his son Mick when the unthinkable happened. He fell, suffering a serious head injury. He was immediately placed in a medically induced coma. The news was grim.
He
is in critical condition in terms of brain resuscitation. All of the recommended treatments are being applied. And for now, we cannot predict the future for Michael Schumacher.
Fans flocked to the site of the accident, praying for the health of their Formula One hero.
I'm not worried or anything, because I know he is going to pull through. I'm sure of it. He's a fighter. He's a champion. So I'm not worried about him. He is going to get better.
Schumacher was moved to a hospital in Lausanne, Switzerland in June 2014 after regaining consciousness. 3 months later, he was allowed to go home to continue his rehabilitation. In November that year, it was reported that Schumacher was paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. The heartbreaking reality sadly delivered by his former boss at Ferrari.
When Michael raced with us, he was the most successful driver in the history of Ferrari. He had only one accident with us, whose fault was ours in 1999, when he broke a leg going off track. He never had another accident. All said that he was a daring skier. But it's not true. For a tragedy of life, he finds himself still in these conditions. He was a great driver. We have had together wonderful years of personal life as well. He has had children. I had children. We had years of great relationship. And I think he deserves a huge applause.
Up next on the Immortals, the spunky Brit who took Formula One by storm. He polarizes opinion and is never far from the headlines. But Lewis Hamilton isn't about making friends. He's about becoming the greatest F1 driver on the planet. There's making a grand entrance, and then there's what Lewis Hamilton did in 2007. The 22-year-old from England had a stellar junior resume behind him, but not a lot was expected when he was named as reigning world champion Fernando Alonso's co-driver at McLaren. That was the last time the Formula One community underestimated Hamilton. In his debut Grand Prix in Australia, he finished third and proceeded to make the podium in his first 9 races, something which had never happened. Before his F1 career was even 8 races old, he was a back-to-back winner. Hamilton failed by just 1 point to win the World Championship in his first season. A superstar had been born. We have never seen anything like this in F1 before. I think the word phenomenon just about fits.
I want to win the World Championship. That's the most important thing. The others are just, it would be nice to win Monaco and Silverstone. I've done one, I plan on doing the other, but the World Championship is the one I want to win.
And Hamilton was in a hurry, kicking off his second season with victory in the opening race in Melbourne. He also saluted around the tight Monaco circuit before his championship aspirations suffered a hit at the Canadian Grand Prix, where he was forced to retire.
Well, I mean, for sure it's going to be tough for the next race, but and we know that we're sort of on the back foot already. But knowing that the pace and the momentum we had already from the last race just shows that anything can happen. I mean, I feel quite confident that we can still win. I've got to. That's my job. I've got to have that belief in myself and the team, and I truly do. I think it's going to be tough, but the key is scoring points. We need to score as many points as we can. So the higher we finish, the better. I still feel we can finish in the top 3, but it's going to be a real challenge.
Hamilton then produced an extraordinary drive in horrible conditions to win the British Grand Prix in front of his family and adoring hometown fans. It is by far the best victory I've ever had. He joined an illustrious list of British names to win their home race, including Stirling Moss, Jackie Stewart, Nigel Mansell, Damon Hill, and David Coulthard. But Hamilton had idolized another great, Ayrton Senna.
It's Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian driver. He was the guy that I noticed when I was a kid, and I just loved what he did as, firstly how he drove, but how he was as a human being, because he made a big difference in how he inspired the people in Brazil. He was bigger than any football player, any president or prime minister or anyone in the team. He was the most influential person in Brazil, you know, in terms of how he gave back to his country. So I love that. You know, he's a real leader and a real iconic figure. So, and he just drove the best. So I always want to be like him.
Hamilton's 2008 championship bid came down to the final race in Brazil, where he needed to finish in the top 5 if his arch-rival Felipe Massa won the event. Things were looking grim until the final turn, where Hamilton pulled off a stunning move to grab 5th and claim the title by 1 point from the Brazilian, who had taken the checkered flag. Surprisingly, Hamilton had to wait another 6 years to taste championship success again. In 2013, he left McLaren for Mercedes, where he was paired with German Nico Rosberg, son of 1982 world champion Keke. Things clicked for the new combination in 2014, with Hamilton winning 4 of the first 5 races of the season. He finished with an incredible 11 wins as he stormed to the world title, with his teammates 67 points adrift in 2nd place.
Well, I mean, I definitely feel like I earned this one. But I mean, you never don't earn a championship. You know, I feel like I drove my heart out this year, you know, and I learned from a lot and I improved a lot, and there's things that I can improve on again, which I will try to work on. But yeah, I feel complete today.
It was a similar story in 2015, with Hamilton winning 3 of the first 4 races and 10 overall to romp home his 3rd world title, equaling his idol.
I just won the World Championship, 3rd time in my career, so emulated Ayrton Senna, who was my favorite driver of all time, and that was my dream since I was like 5 years old. So to do that's a really big point in my life.
Lewis Hamilton enjoys life in the fast lane off the track as much as he does on it. He's just as comfortable walking the red carpet at a fashion show as he is getting behind the wheel of a 900 horsepower F1 Mercedes. There are few more glamorous F1 stars than Hamilton, who is sponsored by Hugo Boss and Puma, and is also the global spokesperson for L'Oreal Men. He has plans to design clothes in the future, while also exploring his love of music. Hamilton is a whiz behind the grand piano, can strum the guitar, and has even written songs. Music is what I love most after racing. He dated Pussycat Dolls singer Nicole Scherzinger for a number of years and counts megastars Kanye, Justin Bieber, and Drake as his buddies. While the glitz and glamour of the Formula One circuit is made for Hamilton, the best driver on the planet understands his importance as a role model, particularly given the color of his skin.
You know, when I arrive at the Grand Prix, I don't arrive and think, oh, I'm a minority. I don't feel that way. I just feel like I have, I'm just beginning to appreciate more that I'm a role model for lost kids, whether it be white, whether it be black, whether it be Asian, whatever.
When we return, how Valentino Rossi remained a MotoGP force. For 2 decades, he's been the best. Valentino Rossi is simply the greatest MotoGP rider in history. Marc Marquez was 3 years old when Valentino Rossi made his Grand Prix debut in Malaysia on March 31st, 1996. Fast forward 20 years, and the Spanish whiz kid won his 3rd MotoGP title from a 37-year-old Rossi. The fact the greatest motorcycle racer in history is still relevant, but also a title challenger a couple of decades after he started, says everything about his genius.
Everyone has got to decide for oneself. I like racing. I like it, but it's true that there is loads of stress. It was like that in 2015 and also this year. There's always a lot of stress. You need a lot of passion. You need to enjoy when you drive, but everyone feels what is right for them.
Rossi won his first world title in the 125cc in 1997. 2 years later, he did it again in the 250cc class. In 2000, he started riding for Honda in the Premier 500cc class and won the World Championship crown in 2001. Rossi claimed the inaugural MotoGP title in 2002 and then won 5 of the next 7. The Italian was destined to be a motorbike rider. Given as a kid, he followed the every move of his father, Graziano Rossi, a 3-time winner on the world circuit.
I
remember when I was very small. They took me. No, I always insisted on going to the races, and naturally, on the day of the races, the pilots are very tense, because they are very busy. Well, I was their nightmare, one of their nightmares, because they could not send me away. They had to listen to me. I was asking a lot of questions. I was glued to them. So they did not like me very much. You were just over 2 years old when you started coming with me to the box to stress my friend pilots. Uncini, Reggiani, Incinelli, asking for autographs, the helmets. They could not send you away because you were my son, but they could not handle you.
Valentino Rossi!
During his extraordinary domination, Rossi strung together a 23-race podium streak, which ended when he finished 4th at the Spanish Grand Prix in 2004. By this stage, he'd moved to Yamaha and hadn't missed a beat. In fact, he'd got even better. Rossi won the 2005 world title by an astonishing 147 points. He was unstoppable until he switched manufacturer in 2011 to Ducati. The move was a disaster, and he endured his first winless season of his MotoGP career. After 2 years, he returned to Yamaha and added to his legend by fighting back from the wilderness to finish second to Marquez in 2014. Fellow Italian Giacomo Agostini holds the record for the most Grand Prix victories, having won 122 times. At the end of the 2016 season, which marked 2 decades in the sport, Rossi was sitting on 114 wins and showing no signs of slowing down. And that's why he's regarded as the best, a MotoGP immortal whose longevity defines his greatness.
Uno.